Hey everybody, I'm Jack Rita. I'm a game designer with Future Pastimes, and I love games. I play a lot of them, and I have a pretty decent collection of games. So I thought I would talk about my 10 favorite cooperative games that are in my collection. And cooperative games have become more and more popular over the last 5 and 10 years, but I think especially because during the COVID lockdown, there were not a lot of opportunities to get out and play games with your friends. So you were mostly playing games with your spouse and your family. And if you didn't want to be in the doghouse after winning a game, you were better off playing something that was cooperative. And I think a lot of other games that were popular because of the lockdown were the ones where you're building your own little engine and someone else is doing theirs, but you're not really interacting with each other. You're certainly not attacking each other. So it's more of a race to the win. But I think that the cooperative games are a great way for people to say, yeah, look, we're either going to win as a group or we're going to lose as a group, but we're going to do this together. The one issue that I think a lot of people find with cooperative games is the alpha gamer syndrome, where you have one person who maybe knows the game or has played it a lot or thinks they do, and they try to dominate and tell everybody what to do on their turn. And I've always been very cognizant of that sort of phenomenon, so I do my best to not be the alpha gamer. And I think I do a pretty good job because my family continues to play cooperative games with me. And I enjoy it. I like the fact that maybe the group is not making the most optimal move. And I know that. And I'm able to bite my tongue and use it as a learning opportunity. So I enjoy it, and I think these are a pretty good group of cooperative games, and a lot of them actually do lend themselves well to, you could have several alpha gamers and it's not going to matter. So we'll talk about that. So let's dive in. My number 10 game is Hanabi. Now, Hanabi is a card game, and it barely has a theme. It's about trying to get the fireworks to go off in the right order. It really doesn't matter. It's more of a logical puzzle. So the thing that I like about Hanabi the best is the fact that everybody is holding their cards, their hand of cards, away from them. So everyone can see what everyone else is holding, but you can't see what you're holding. And I think that backwardness of the cards is my favorite thing about Hanabi. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to give the other players a very limited amount of information in which to make decisions in a finite number of times. Optimally, you're trying to play cards in a certain order without knowing if for sure that you're playing the right card at the right time. So you're making intuitive guesses a lot of the times, but you can develop a rhythm where the players are really in sync. And so with certain people that I play with, we can almost always get a perfect score. And with other people, it's just how close to a perfect score can you get. So I like showing Hanabi to people because it is so unusual in the gameplay, and it really opens them up to the idea that modern board gaming is wild and different and interesting, and it's a card game that I have had a lot of success getting people into gaming just because of how unusual and simple it is to play, but not necessarily easy to win. So Hanabi, there's a more, I have the first edition of it, so it was just a card game. There's a more up-to-date version of it that I haven't played, and I don't really know a lot about it, but I think it has tiles and it's a little bit easier to manage. It makes it easier to play, and therefore I think in some ways maybe even easier to win, but not necessarily. So I don't know, I'm just guessing. So yeah, it's on Board Game Arena, and it's really well done there. And that implementation, I think, also makes it easier to win. So go check that out and try Hanabi. Tell me what you think of it. My number 9 game is Castle Panic. Now, Castle Panic is a fantasy-themed game. It's very light. It has a whimsical approach to it. Everybody is in a castle, and you're being attacked by goblins and other baddies, and you're trying to stave them off as it continues to escalate until you reach a certain point where you are victorious. The reason that I like this is because my family, we got into it very easily. I could play it with my kids when they were fairly young. They're much older now, but it still holds up. So Castle Panic is a pretty straightforward and easy to play cooperative game. Doesn't take a long time. It's about a 40-minute adventure, and yeah, it's a good time. And it's one again where I didn't necessarily feel like I had to always tell them what to do. They were able to pick up on optimal moves pretty instinctively. So I think Castle Panic is still a pretty good game, and I enjoy it. My number 8 game is Jalapagos. Now, Jalapagos is a game where all the players are stranded on an island, and you're trying to gather enough food and water, and while you are building a raft to get away from the island before the monsoon season starts and everyone gets wiped out by rain and flood and whatnot. Now, this is a cooperative game, but it does have sort of a sinister element to it where you can basically pull a gun on somebody and say, like, I'm taking your food, that sort of thing. So very thematic, I think, in many ways. But when we play it, we do try our best to try to get everybody off the island if we can. That said, you're never sure exactly how long you have before the storms are going to get there. If you try to go get stuff out in the jungle, you risk being bitten by venomous snakes, and there's other setbacks that come in. Plus, because you have to eat and drink as you are trying to build the raft. So it's a good game. It's tense. It has very simple mechanisms, so it's easy to teach to people. I've played this with my normal non-gamer friends, and we all had a good time with it. So I love Galapagos. I think it is a fun time. It's still cooperative, but again, it has that, like, I don't know if I can really trust you, and I may have to turn against you element to it that, again, is driven by thematics, so I don't mind having that in there in a cooperative game. And it does make the alpha gamer syndrome almost disappear entirely, just because like, I don't trust you. I can't take what you're saying. I know that you think that's the best move to make, but I don't necessarily agree. So that it really works in its favor in that way. So Galapagos, go check that out. My number 7 game is Ghost Stories. Now, this is a game where the players are all these sort of kung fu, they reminds me a lot of Big Trouble in Little China, which is why I made my own custom Big Trouble in Little China expansion for Ghost Stories. But anyway, you're these kung fu Zen masters, and your little village is being attacked by ghosts from all sides. So you're trying to defeat the ghosts as you wait for the head ghost to show up, and then try to take them out. And it's very colorful. It's a whimsical take on it, and it's very challenging. But the tension keeps building, so I like it a lot. I really like the White Moon expansion that comes with it, because I think it adds a lot more that you can do as the players, so it makes the game feel less repetitive. I've never tried the Black Secret, which was the second expansion. It's been on my wish list forever. Eventually I'll get it, but Ghost Story still holds up. It is a lot of fun, and it has a lot of really interesting elements to it. I love the artwork in it, and the little miniatures are fun. So I think it's a really interesting game. It's a good co-op, and it's a fun time, but can be very challenging. So be aware of that. My number 6 game is Mountains of Madness. Now, this is a really unusual game that kind of took me by surprise. I picked it up on a lark just because I am into Lovecraftian horror. I really love the genre. And so I have a lot of those games. I pick a lot of them up, even the ones that I suspect or even know are not that good, because every once in a while we have a very Lovecraftian sort of gathering. We're not summoning anything, just so you know, but a lot of my friends are also fans of that genre, so we do like to get together and maybe just do a bunch of little Lovecraftian games, sometimes a little of them leading up to a big one, which is later on in this list. But what's really interesting about Mountains of Madness is it has a lot of really interesting and original takes on the idea of the players are starting to go insane the further they go up the mountain to try to win the game. And it is almost like a party game in disguise because it is hilarious. It's a really fun and funny game. I brought it to a game night with my serious gamer friends, and I was like, let's try this out. They were all very skeptical, but within 10 minutes of playing it, we were laughing, and just about everybody in that group went and picked that game up themselves. So it is a really good game. It's passingly Lovecraftian, and it's more about just the really funny handicaps that you are imposed on you as you're playing. So you're trying to deal with it because you can't explain to people why you're doing things differently or in a strange way or reacting in unusual ways. They have to figure that out. They have to go, huh, he seems to be doing this a lot. I think that might have to do with his personal insanity that he's undergoing, or she keeps doing this thing. We didn't notice it at first, but now she's doing it more and more. It's becoming more obvious. So that sort of thing creeps into the game, and you're trying to deal with it and trying to find workarounds, and it's just a lot of fun. So I highly recommend Mountains of Madness. I think it's a very fun game. It's very funny. It's a party game for hardcore gamers because it does have a lot of those classic gamer game elements that hardcore gamers like. So it's not just, oh, act silly. You're trying to play a serious game while the silly stuff is popping up all over the place, slowly at first and then building up over the course of the game. My number 5 game is Mysterium. So Mysterium is a really interesting game in that it has a lot of abstraction in it, but you're trying to work together as a team. We have one player who is not communicating directly with the other players. They're essentially a ghost. The other players are trying to solve their murder in what feels kind of like a Clue style set of criteria. You're trying to figure out where they were killed, who killed them, and what they killed them with. But it is so far superior to Clue, and that is because of how you are trying to get that information. So the ghost is using a set of cards with this sort of abstract or surreal artwork on it, very similar to the sort of art you'd see in Dixit if you're familiar with that game. And they're using them as clues. So they have a set of cards that show exactly which room and who the killer was and what the weapon were. And they're trying to get players to guess that. But at the very part of the game, the early part of the game, everybody has their own personal set. So each player has, if for you, it's this room, this killer, and this weapon. And for you, it's a completely different set. So you're trying to get everyone to guess their personal set. And once they've done that, then you're narrowing it down to one player using your dream card. So it's a really original and interesting take on it. It's a challenging game because you only have a finite number of times to give out these clues. But again, I've played this with my family and with my normal friends and with my hardcore gamer friends, and we all enjoy it just about the same. So it's an interesting experience. It's a great, nighttime gaming experience. We play it around Halloween just about every year. So it's a good time. It's got a kind of a spooky atmosphere to it. Well, not really, but we tried to build that into the gaming experience with, spooky music in the background and the lights are low, but not too low because you're trying to see the details on these images that you are getting, and you're having to work with what you've got. So a lot of times you're looking at your cards as the ghost, and you're like, oh, I don't know. I'm really trying to find some imagery within this picture to connect them to a specific thing that they're trying to associate. So, and everything becomes subjective as you're playing it, but that's part of the fun. So, I like Mysterium. I think it's a good time. My number 4 game is Arkham Horror. So I played the original Arkham Horror in the 80s, the Richard Launius one, where it was roll and move around the board. It was not a serious game. But again, it was Lovecraftian, so that was why we picked it up. We thought it was kind of a fun goofy time for once every decade. Then Fantasy Flight and Kevin Wilson came out with a much more updated and serious take on Arkham Horror, and a lot of expansions for it. And I have everything, but it's all first edition. So I've got the complete first edition on Arkham Horror, but it's a really interesting cooperative Lovecraftian game. You're trying to fight off the monsters in the town. You're trying to get the clues, close the gates before the great old one shows up and everyone dies. So it's very thematic. We really enjoy it. It's got a lot of interesting stuff to it. I'd love to try out the more, like, I believe it's a third edition at this point. I haven't played second or third edition because I've got, $500 worth of first edition. So I'm still doing that. But if you're using everything, it's taking up 2 tables worth of material. So it is a production. It's like, all right, we're going to spend the day doing this, and half of the day we're just going to either set it up or clean it up. But that is we, like I said, we sometimes have a big Lovecraftian day of it, play some light Lovecraftian games early in the day, and then we head to where we've already set up Arkham Horror, and we make a day of it. And I love that. I've got a lot of interesting custom dice for it. So for me, it scratches a lot of those itches. And I do enjoy that it is cooperative because, again, it's fun to work with the people. You feel like you are a team of investigators trying to get everything you need in order to stave off evil. So Arkham Horror, I like it a lot, but it's an investment of time, energy, and sanity in order to really dive in and play it, at least the way that we like to play it, because we like to throw in a lot of the extra goodies that have come out in all of the expansions. So there's a lot of material for Arkham Horror, but I enjoy it. So I like that sort of thing. I've always been the kind of player who likes the expansions and wants to use the expansions and incorporate them into the gameplay as much as possible. So with my Lovecraftian gamer friends, they all appreciate that as well. So we like having all the extra stuff. It's a lot to keep track of, but we're up to the challenge. So that is my number 4 game. Number 3 for me is Gloomhaven. So Gloomhaven, it's a box that comes in a giant trunk, and it has a bunch of miniatures and a bunch of standees and tons of these puzzle piece floor tiles that you connect together, and cards and cards and cards and cards. And a great system of gameplay. It's got a great design. Gloomhaven is an amazing game. Now, it's not higher up on the list for one reason, and that is because it is too friggin' fiddly for me. All those little tokens keeping track of, I'm poisoned and stunned, and this guy, these 3 monsters are also muddled, and all this going, let me grab the cards for this thing, and all of this, it's too much. But there is a fantastic app of Gloomhaven on Steam that I play with my friends, and I play solo, and it implements everything that you love about the game, and it does it automates everything. So it's just utterly brilliant. So I highly recommend you play the app. I kind of recommend that you get Gloomhaven. It's a gigantic box, and that's because it's just utterly filled with little fiddly bits and standees and tokens, and it's just, for me, it takes too long to set up and then even longer to put away. And the juice was not quite worth the squeeze in the end, but it's a brilliant game. It really is a really well-designed game. It does a lot of interesting, original things. It's got some really good scenarios. From what I've heard from my friends on Frosthaven, it builds on that and does a lot of interesting new things. And it really is for people who enjoy Gloomhaven and are ready to take it to the next level. So check those out for sure, but try that app. That's your best bet to try out to play it. It's really well done. It's interesting. It's a nice shared adventure with the other players and an interesting puzzle to be solved. And because you are trying to optimize your actions, you have a set of cards that you're using. You use a bunch of the cards, and then once you are basically out of them, you're going to get rid of one of them permanently for that adventure, and then use the cards that you have left But some of the cards, if you want to use an effect on them, it means you're also getting rid of it. Each card has two main effects on it, so you're going to be playing two cards using the top effect for one, the bottom effect for the other. Although you don't have to commit to which one until it's your turn. So you're going to select these cards and everyone's going to reveal them. You'll have an initiative order, and then you're going to see what the monsters are going to be doing. And based on that, you can say, well, when I chose these two cards, I was going to use the top effect for this one and the bottom effect for the other one. But now, seeing what the game state is, it's actually probably better for me to use the top effect for the other card and then the bottom effect for what was going to be the first one. And so I enjoy that. It's very cleverly done. So Gloomhaven is a brilliant game, just a fantastic design. The implementation for me is just so... I'd rather show up at somebody else's house and I'd have a great time playing Gloomhaven, and I'd be like, all right, good luck putting that shit away because it's not for me. It's just too much. I would help, but you have your own system of your compartments and boxes and bins and whatever. And that's the other. It's not like, oh, just put everything back where it goes. Who knows where it goes? It's just so chaotic. So that I do not appreciate, which is why the app is so much far superior. So Gloomhaven, my number 3 game. Number 2 for me is actually a series of games, but they're all based on one game, and that game is Pandemic. I think Pandemic it's one of the best cooperative games ever to come along, and a lot of people agree because there are now like 18 different versions of Pandemic. Now, I only have 3 versions of it, so I have Pandemic, I guess 4, because I also have the Legacy, first season Legacy, but now that we finished it, we don't play that one anymore, so really only 3. Pandemic. And I have a lot of custom expansions for Pandemic because it was just so robust. It lends itself to it. So that's one of the other reasons why it's so high up on my list. But on its own, even with just the base game, it's still a really good game. This is a game where the alpha gamer can totally ruin the experience for everybody. So it's one where I do my best not to tell everybody what to do, especially because I've played it so much. That I have a good sense of, well, here's the best way to optimize this mix of roles that we're playing based on where the diseases are and what's going on. And which is why I like all the other expansions in there, because then it keeps me on my toes as well. But I also have the Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu one, because of course I do. I like all the Lovecraftian stuff. It's not as good as regular Pandemic, but it's Lovecraftian, so you got that going for it. So I like that, and I've got a custom expansion for that one as well. And then, of course, I have Defenders of Realm, which is the fantasy re-theme of Pandemic, which the designer will say it's nothing like Pandemic, but it is. It's exactly like Pandemic. It's Pandemic, but in a fantasy theme. And yes, it does do a few new things, which is great, which is one of the reasons why I like it. There's some quirky art direction things in Defenders of the Realm that I don't love. Comic Sans being one of them, but some of the other stuff. But overall, it's got some nice miniatures, which I like, and it's very thematic, and the stuff that is new and unique to Defenders of Realm is well done and also thematic. So it's a game that I know I can get to the table because a lot of my family and friends love fantasy games. So that is a good time, but Pandemic is still probably the king. You're all working together to try to find the cures to 4 infectious diseases before it overruns the entire world. The Season 1 Legacy version of it, I think, is fantastic. I had a blast with it. It was basically Pandemic, and then each time you started over to reset and play the game, you were instructed to add in a variant or an expansion, some of which were very much original to that Legacy experience. And of course, the board and the cards and the effects are changing with the use of stickers and things being added in or permanently removed from the game. So I think it's one of the best Legacy takes on a game. Really well done. Didn't get into Season 2 as much. Like a lot of the people that we wanted to play Season 2 with, who had played Season 1, had a real hard time with it. So it was just too complex. And too alien compared to the other ones. So I haven't checked out Season 0 yet, but we did not get very far in Season 2. So I stick to the regular Pandemic, more or less, and we're kind of creating our own Legacy version of it that we can play with all of our custom expansions. So it's more like a campaign than a legacy style experience, not unlike the Cosmic Encounter campaign, which I designed. So I was definitely inspired by Pandemic Legacy when designing that. But Fantasy Flight didn't want to do a legacy game; they wanted to just do a campaign. So that's where I went with that, and that's what I do with my Pandemic campaign. It's randomly generated, and it tells us what to use, and then we just build on that way. So Pandemic and all its others, like I said, there's so many different other pandemics, different themes, many of which have nothing to do with an actual pandemic, but it's using that system. It's using the Pandemic system. So if there's a particular theme that you like, you can probably find a pandemic-like game that has it. So check that out. It's pretty good co-op. Which brings me to my number one game, my number one cooperative game, and it's cooperative with an asterisk, and that is Nemesis. I think Nemesis is a fantastic game. I love it. I love everything about it, the boards and the components and the miniatures. It's got a lot of stuff going on, but unlike with Gloomhaven, it actually is relatively easy to set up, and putting stuff away is much easier because stuff does have a clear home where it goes. For most of it, at least it was easier for me to make some of the organizational elements on there. But the gameplay, I think, is very tight. What's the asterisk about? Well, it's because technically Nemesis can be a non-cooperative game. But the thing is you don't know for sure if it is. Now, in the base box, it has objectives for the players. And some of the objectives involve ensuring that a specific player is killed without you directly trying to kill them. Those have been removed. I don't really like those. I do like that you're not sure who you can trust. So I've created a lot of custom objectives for my set of Nemesis. And certainly if I'm trying to do something like blow up the ship, and you're trying to do something like make sure the ship gets to destination B, we're not cooperating on those end objectives. And only one of us is going to be able to win when they are so diametrically opposed. So it's not fully cooperative, but again, we could have objectives that are all in sync, but we don't know it. And that's what I really love about that game in terms of cooperative. So it falls into a thematic thing where ostensibly we should be cooperating because we're being attacked by these aliens, so we need to survive, and it's better if we work together to do that. But everyone has their motivations, and they don't always align. So I like that. So this is definitely not the most cooperative game on the list. It's in some ways, except for Jalapagos, it's the least cooperative, fully cooperative, but it might be completely cooperative, and it changes from game to game. So I like all of the game mechanisms to Nemesis. I like the miniatures and the components. I like the atmosphere. This is definitely a game where we've got music playing and the lights are doing crazy things, and so it is a very immersive experience for me when I play Nemesis. I really enjoy it. People who play with it are like, wow, that was amazing. I've shown this to non-gamer friends and have converted them. They're like, oh yeah, I want to play Nemesis and anything like it. So it's given me the opportunity to show them a lot of other really interesting, especially thematic games that has gotten them into the hobby. So, and that is my objective, trying to indoctrinate as many people as I can into board gaming so that I have more people to board game with. That's really what it's all about for me. So Nemesis does it for me. I think it's a great game. It's one of my most favorite thematic games as well, because you really feel like you are in some version of an alien movie. They do a good job of saying, well, it's not alien. No, actually, they don't do a good job. They do a terrible job, but they go through the motions of saying it's not alien. It's not that IP. It's its own thing. And now that they've introduced more and different alien type monsters, so with the first real expansion, the lockdown expansion, there's now like 4 basic alien species that you can fight it out with. One's very much like a plant-based thing, and the other ones look except for the one in the base game, the other ones don't really look much like the alien, the Giger alien, but still you feel like you're in some kind of version of one of those movies. or something like that. So you feel like you're having a story unfold, and you are part of it, and the cooperative element of the gameplay is good. It really deals with the alpha gamer well because of the fact that you're not sure who you can trust. So players are doing their own thing, and you can suggest, you can say, why don't you come over here and help me out with this? And they'd be like, you know what, I really feel like I need to check the engines. And you know what, they do, except that you don't know that you can trust that what they're checking is going to align with what you hope that they're checking. So everything makes sense because it is thematic, and you're not sure who you can trust. You're hoping that you can trust everyone, but as the game progresses, you get more and more of a sense of, oh, you know what, I really don't think we can trust that guy anymore. I think he's not working with us. And then, they're completely immune to Alpha Gamer at that point because you just don't think that they're even trying to help you win. So that's one of the reasons why it has scored number 1 on my list of cooperative games. So that's my list. Let me know what your favorite cooperative games are and why. Let me know what you think of any of these games, if you've played them or if you haven't. And if you do try them out after watching this, let me know your thoughts afterward. And anything else that you want to say about cooperative games in general, I'd love to hear about it. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.